like a flyer. He gave me the card of a divorce attorney. No inquiries. Not guilty. Simply put, give me $1.0 a month since you don't work. Emily. My oldest friend grinned like she had won a prize next to him. I refrained from screaming. I refrained from crying. All right, I said. Let's get a divorce. And I knew right then and then how this was going to end. Not with a struggle, not while crying. However, in silence and destroy. Betrayal doesn't happen overnight, they say. One day, though, it's just there, with eyes that no longer see you. They are sitting across from you at the kitchen table, drinking coffee from the mug you purchased. John was that person, my spouse of more than 15 years. And next to him, Emily, since we were 10 years old, my best pal, the one I braided my hair with, the one who, after being dumped by her high school sweetheart, once sobbed on my lap. Before John ended up with me, he had a crush on this person. Yes, she. It worked for years. We had this peculiar triangle of allegiance. When John and I married at the age of 25, Emily, a wild, endearing Emily, became a part of our life. We all breathed easier once she married George. At last, she belonged to someone else. Until she became pregnant. Everything changed at that point. Emily claimed that the stench made her sick. So John quit smoking. He drove her to her OB-GYN appointments using his paid time off. Shouldn't George be the one doing that? I recall asking him. You're being heartless, John said, giving me a scowl. Callous. Me. The woman who has been covering for Emily's breakdowns since college and purchasing diapers and onesies. I'm not jealous, I remarked. The problem is that you're going too far, his answer. Anyway, you won't become pregnant. What is the issue? Then, the breaking point ought to have been that line. I still loved him, though. I continued to believe that this was only a difficult time. The graduation followed. It was Emma's daughter's kindergarten graduation. John began going through the closet like a man on fire as I was in the kitchen brewing coffee. What are you doing? In search of a suit. Emma's graduation is something I'm going to, I blinked. Wait, what? She invited me to attend. George won't go. He's occupied. Instead, Emily asked me. He suddenly threw a shirt at me and asked, Can you iron this? The house seemed to have swung sideways as I stood there clutching the garment. I gave Emily a call. Hey, I was just wondering about the graduation. Shouldn't George? Oh, George has no idea. I'll let him know later. You didn't inform him at all. You're being frightening. Sarah, calm down. She hung up after that. The shirt was still pressed by me, even still. I watched John go that morning like a proud father figure. Then I ought to have burned it all. However, I didn't. Not quite yet. After that, I began to pay closer attention, the late evenings. The plans were canceled. Emma would refer to John as Dad, and neither he nor Emily would reprimand her. Emily's real husband, George, showed up at my door one evening. I apologize for the late hour, he said, but I believe we should speak. He showed me Emily's car's GPS tracker. 3 times a week. The same lodging. John was present. We didn't cry. We didn't yell. We prepared tea, sat quietly. We then came up with a plan. Income comes first, in order to assist with Emma's care and housekeeping. I had reduced my freelance work. Now that was over. George relocated closer to me and began working remotely. Emma started coming to my house in the afternoons, while John and Emily did whatever the hell they were doing. We kept our knowledge to ourselves. We gathered proof, silently, exactly. Then the actual blow struck. The next section will be out soon. However, I have a question for you. What would you do if your best friend and the man you love asked you to iron the shirt? He wore to his affair while acting as like you didn't exist. For me, it was ironed by myself. I then began honing every nuance of my quiet. When I called the hospital, my hands were shaking. Not out of fear, not even grief. Just the knowledge that this wasn't a passing phase. After saying long term, the doctors added the word that no one loves to hear when you ask for a timeline unclear. So I gave John a call, told him everything, diagnosis, course of therapy, and chances. He gave a grunt. Well, I'll come see you sometime, he said, Didn't inquire about the illness's name. Didn't inquire about my level of fear. Didn't even inquire about my needs. Only sometimes. As promised, he made one visit. Then 2 months were skipped. Emma, however, was there every day. She had her sketchbook by my bed. Draw small creatures. Showed each page to me. With Emily's eyes and George's patience, she was developing into this gentle, intelligent girl. And I adored her for reasons I couldn't quite put into words. Not as a mom. Not as a step anything even. Even simply because I had been there, as if they had stayed. But Emma changed after becoming 15. Less noisy, anxious, far away. She still showed up, but quiet accompanied her. Not the quiet sort either. The type that envelops you like a damp blanket. Once, I asked her whether anything had happened. Simply put, "Don't worry about it," she said. So I made an effort not to. Until John came in again at last. More than a month had passed. He didn't knock, as though it were still his. He just opened the door. A card was tossed upon the table, he said. "Divorce lawyer," as if he were presenting me with a menu from a restaurant. "Since you're not working, pay me 1.000 in alimony each month. Does that sound good?" He grinned. Emily was leaning on the wall behind him, her arms encircling his, matching smiles. They didn't even notify me we were playing, yet they seemed to have won a game. I had a look at the card. Next, at them. "All right," I replied. "Let's get a divorce." John blinked. For a moment only. That was unexpected. Excellent. The rest would be simpler as a result. I got to work the day the documents arrived. I gave George a call. We decided to move hospitals, get quieter, get closer. I gave my lawyer everything. No more face-to-face interaction. No more empty-handed chats. George and Emma relocated close to the medical facility. She visited every day, but she still carried that sadness with her. I also saw that her eyes softened once again when I wasn't referring to Emily or John. John could retain the old flat, I assured him. I said a falsehood. He didn't own that apartment. My art studio had always belonged to me, fully funded by years of illustration commissions and late-night forgetfulness. Because he couldn't afford a place on his own, John had recently moved in. Rent was never paid by him. The bills were never touched. Like a tenant with a key I never made. I simply lived there. And the day following my divorce filing, I ended the lease, didn't speak. I instructed the landlord to take care of it. When I left a hospital session a week later, I noticed that John had 30 missed calls. 30! The 30 honest was my response. "What the devil is happening?" he yelled. In the background, I could hear Emily yelling something unintelligible and the voice of a realtor. The phone was held away from my ear. "What are you saying? Why are we being told to vacate the apartment?" "Because it's not your apartment," I answered, as composed as a lake before a storm. "It was never quiet, the tasty sort." "Ha," I remarked. "John, you never paid rent. You were a visitor, more quiet." Then the yelling began. I didn't flinch though. I allowed him to go off on a tangent and inquire as to whether I had sent him the requested amount. He thought he would simply receive the $11.00 so. "Oh, that! I don't recall making any agreements. Sarah, quit playing games." I put the phone on speaker and resumed drawing in my hospital notepad. I remarked, "There is nothing more to discuss. Now we are strangers. You can speak with my lawyer if you need anything." He made an effort to back off and lower his voice. However, I had already hung up. He called again and again. I ceased responding. He disregarded my attorney. Then he called one again. It was similar to witnessing someone drown in their own conceit. At last, I was dry. After a brief discharge a few weeks later, I went on a quick trip. I drove to John's parents' house with the quietest anger I've ever had and a small bag of papers. He was present. Emily was, too. Like frightened children, they both sat on that comfortable sofa, anticipating their report cards. The papers were placed on the table by me. "I just came to give a proper explanation," John yelled. "That's a low blow, bringing our parents into this." I didn't answer. His dad was the first to speak. "Is it accurate? Will you wed Emily?" John's chest puffed. "Indeed. It is a fresh beginning." His mother closed her eyes as if the end of the world had just been announced to her. You're using her in place of Sarah, John laughed. At least you'll have a grandchild now. Connected to blood. Emma looked up from her phone at that moment. What did she say after that? The entire room went frigid. You know how a room sounds when embarrassment takes hold. It's not quiet. It's not that tight. It's the sound of individuals attempting to hold their breath, since doing so could break anything. That was how the room felt. Emily had just stated, "You'll be happy, right?" With complete assurance and without a hint of cynicism. At last, you will have a grandchild, connected to blood, as if it were the reward, as if I had been the error. Beside her, smirking like a fool, was John. His parents appeared to be getting older every second. Then, Emma. She never even raised her head from her phone. She simply said, flat and soft, enough already. It's repulsive. The air broke, as though the words couldn't have come from her own kid. Emily blinked. John became rigid. Emma looked up at last. The only person I think of as my father is my dad, whether or if we are blood relatives. Emily attempted to interrupt, but Emma persisted. Be calm, chilly, sincere. You realize what's amusing. Dad was constantly at my school functions, you say. However, you never brought up the fact that he only learned about those incidents after they had already occurred. You don't allow him to be there, you concealed it. And he continued to appear each time, like a balloon losing air. I watched Emily becoming smaller on her chair. Emma's tone remained steady. You continued to lie. He continued to refer to me as his daughter, though. So to me, that's who he is. How about you? With the weight of 15 years behind her, she gazed at Emily. My mother will never be you. I was having trouble breathing. I had been suppressing my emotions for so long that I had forgotten what it was like to let go. Emma got up, came over, and took a seat next to me. As if it were the most normal thing in the world, she took my hand. She muttered, I was scared. I assumed you would despise me when I found out. But you wouldn't, according to Dad. I gave her hand a squeeze. You came to see me every day, Emma. That was never required. Love was that. Regardless of what biology says, you are mine. Then she started crying, only a bit. However, I noticed her shoulders becoming lighter. I embraced her. She chose love despite 15 years of chaos, treachery, silence, and secrets. I was still her choice. Unable to say. Emily sat motionless. However, the entrance door clicked before she could speak. George entered. Be calm. Cool. John recoiled at his sight. He apologized for interrupting. I just wanted to double-check some legal information. Emily tensed. George gave her a direct look. The divorce documents you submitted were never processed. Legally, you are still my wife. Her mouth fell open. What? Months ago. I filed them. George gave a headshake. You turned them in, however. You overlooked the last confirmation. Additionally, our state has a 100-day waiting period for remarriage. You haven't finished yet. Therefore, you are still technically mine. He wasn't upset. Just the facts. And it got worse because of that. With panic finally catching up with her, Emily got to her feet. However, I'm single. Not yet, George remarked. And legally, I still have custody of Emma. But wait, Emma wants to move in with me. Emily turned swiftly. Emma merely scowled, then gave me a glance. He tightened his grip on my hand. Ever the brilliance. John decided it was time to chuckle. He remarked, Well, this is rich. Are you two now together? Whoa. I'm eager to see how long that continues. Really, Sarah, what are you capable of? You're ill. You're not employed. You will simply pass away on a bed. I looked over at him. I grinned as well. I responded softly. John, what do you think my income is? He blinked. I'm not sure. Something a bit more than a part-time job. I chuckled. A silent one. The knife-carrying kind. Every year. I earn $500,000. His face cracked, literally, like witnessing the soul of a person pass through their pupils and exit their body. Emily's jaw dropped. You're telling lies. I pulled out my phone and presented my bank statement to them. Deposits in line after line. Royalties dots agreements. The publisher makes progress. I'm now a best-selling author of children's books. A movie is being made based on one of my books. John stumbled back as if he had been struck in the chest. But Emily, she took a step forward. Let's just make up, Sarah. All right, we were foolish, however. That is the past, I arched an eyebrow. John gave her the look of someone who had gone insane. What are you saying? She has money. Therefore, you're going to run back to her. Oh, it was there. The most accurate statement he had ever made. Slowly, I got to my feet. You two wish to tie the knot. Proceed. However, I will be pursuing damages. Sarah, no. I gave them both a direct look. We're finished. I'm not your backup plan. I'm not there to protect you. The woman you undervalued is me. I looked across at George. Leave now. We then departed. They didn't comply. They were unable to. Because I had left without bearing the burden of anyone else for the first time in years. Only my. It was also light. What does no one tell you? That those who have drained you of your life don't burn to the ground when you eventually leave them. They decay, silently, individually. They occasionally even manage to smile through it. Until they are no longer able to, after that day. John gave one call, then twice. 37 times after that, I didn't answer. He then began to disregard my lawyer's correspondence. The payment hearings were missed, made false claims regarding addresses, claimed to have never received the paperwork, when the world doesn't give them what they want. It was like seeing a toddler close their ears and yell la la la. I once believed him to be emotionally immature. However, it turns out that he was merely a coward. John had also been lying at work, and my father-in-law discovered this. He would claim to be going to meetings and then spend the day with Emily at her house or in cafes. Nothing for hours, not a single sales call, no agreements. He was sacked after the truth was revealed, silently, not a drama, nothing but a box of items and a broken lock combination. In the hopes that they would support him, John went to his parents. They didn't. You embarrassed your mother, his father, a severe, sea-weathered man, remarked, looking him in the eye. Your wife was embarrassed by you. Additionally, you made fun of your own daughter. He had nowhere to go, according to John. Then get on the boat. His father answered. The boat was used for fishing. It was run by an old friend of his dad's. A hard staff, open ocean, no Wi-Fi, no nice beds, no hot coffee. Only backbreaking labor starting at 4 a.m. until sunset, and the lingering scent of fish on your clothing. After 3 days, he made another attempt to contact me. The number was blocked by me, then sent his father the voicemail. After that, the call ceased. Emily, slower, she unraveled. Emma was taken away from her. She didn't even try. Not because she was a bad mother, failed to appear in court, failed to file the appropriate paperwork. As usual. I assumed that things would just go her way. George didn't even need to engage in combat. She simply lost. Mutual contacts informed me that she attempted to remain with friends, but was repeatedly expelled. Ended up in a little one-room apartment with a faulty heating and peeling wallpaper. Since college, she has not held a job. She had been given everything, specially designed for her. And now, she had nothing in her hands. She made an effort to find employment. But most employers wouldn't hire someone with no skills, no experience, and a temperament that broke under duress. She was working 3 part-time jobs and barely making ends meet when I last heard from her. It's interesting that karma doesn't always shout. It can occasionally appear in the mail like a bill. Regarding Emma, she blossomed. She began saving every cent by working part-time after school, her fantasy, to pursue education overseas. Translate books for kids, particularly mine, she once said to me. Your stories made me feel seen, as if I weren't an error. When she departed that evening, I started crying, not because I was depressed. However, I allowed myself to feel the burden of all I had borne for the first time at that moment. At last, put it down. My own universe, silently. It grew. The novels continued to sell. A film agreement was signed. I began receiving calls from publishers, offers for interviews, and merchandising lines. I brought on a small staff. Leave the turmoil to them. All I wanted to do was draw. My treatment was modified by my physician. Stated that I might be released the next year if things went well. I began drawing a new book. There is a story of a bird that spent so much time in a cage that it forgot it had wings. Then George arrived. He knocked calmly on the hospital door he had been using for years. He brought tea, a blanket too, Emma's most recent report card too. He then took a seat next to me, remained silent for a long time. At last, he stated, "When you're out, I want to live with you." I gave him a look at the man who witnessed his entire life crumble, yet still had time for a woman who wasn't his wife and a child who wasn't even his. He went on, "I want to build a home again, but I know you might not be ready. Alongside you." I didn't respond. Not immediately. Certain silences are responses in and of themselves. However, as I grasped his hand across the table, he got it. A tale I'm still composing. I didn't sleep the first night I was not in the hospital. Not due to discomfort. Not out of fear. However, the silence no longer seemed menacing. It seemed earned. The refrigerator was stocked by George. Emma scribbled notes on each drawer. My bed was covered in a cozy robe, and the scent of lemongrass tea wafted from the kitchen. No big speeches. No crying is welcome. Simply put, peace. And that was all. John didn't call again. I believe that even he realized there was nothing more to say at one point. There is nothing to desire, nothing to demand or distort. Word spread that he was bouncing between temp labor and warehouses following the fishing job. Burned bridges more quickly than he constructed them. He persisted in attempting to re-enter locations where he didn't belong. But now, nobody paid attention. The loudest voice in the room used to be his. He is now only a sound that no one can hear. Emily dwindled even more quickly. She relocated to another town. Nobody is certain of the location. She cleans offices at night. According to someone, claimed to be a recluse, doesn't discuss her past. Doesn't bring up Emma. I thought maybe one day she might get in touch. Give it another go. Express regret. She didn't. And I gave up waiting. Emma comes once a week, more occasionally. She delivers stories, sweets, and international college brochures. She gave me a package one day that she had created herself, an original French translation of one of my picture books. She presented it as a question and a gift. One day, she declared, "I want to translate them all. I want children everywhere to experience the same emotions that I did after reading your debut novel." In the best manner possible, my heart sprang wide. I said to her, "You are all ready. George, too. He doesn't talk a lot about love. He doesn't show me a lot of flowers or make me promises. He simply remains. He pays attention. Even when I'm exhausted, he never tells me to stop working and always brings me coffee the way I like it. I'm not John," he didn't have to say. "I am aware. I think about the past like an old scar sometimes. Although it no longer hurts, I learn not to rely on it. John is not someone I despise. I don't mean any harm to Emily. I have no wishes for them. And I believe that's the true conclusion. I wasn't standing over their destruction at the end of this story. This is where it ended, warm and cozy in a tiny place. A sketchbook open, tea cooling next to me on a calm afternoon. George was humming in the kitchen while Emma cuddled up on the couch. It concluded with a door that only those who chose me can open. Not because they are in need of anything. Not because they're trying to dominate me. However, it's because they love me, just plain, silently, completely. So no, I didn't pull off an incredible takedown to win the war. I simply ceased bleeding, and I began to live.